Welcome to the Alive and Kicking podcast. I'm your host, Kay Eck, and this is where we talk to ordinary people about their extraordinary lives. Welcome back to the Alive and Kicking podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to be joined by Catalina Osorio. Good morning for me, Catalina. Good evening for you.
Good morning, Kay. Thank you for inviting me.
So I became acquainted with you through a couple of Facebook groups. And then about a month and a half or 2 months ago, I happened to catch your interview with Todd Medina. And I was so captivated by your story and your beauty and grace that I just wanted to continue the conversation because at the end of the conversation, you started dropping a lot of wisdom bombs that I was like, oh, if you guys had had another hour, you would have really been able to get into that. So I want to talk a little bit about your background, but I really want to get into the part where you're teaching us how you came through all of that and came into all of it. So you grew up in Colombia. And you, by the time you were 10 or 11, you had moved to Bogota. And that was an extremely violent and dangerous backdrop to your teens, your early teens. But prior to that, your life was also marked by a great deal of violence and danger and risk. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your early days and what your life was like in Colombia.
Well, it's funny because when I listen to you say that, now it feels like a movie, right? Like, oh yes, she's talking, and I'm going to talk what I came through in my life, but it feels like a movie, right? And so the story of my movie is, yes, I was born in Colombia in 1981. And so in those years in Colombia, there was more or less the years of Pablo Escobar. Mm-hmm. So the violence outside home was continuously violence. I was born in a family that didn't have much money. We were like people call poor, survival, right? Like we had to eat, but it was like you have anything you want to eat. It's like a struggle for everything. So pressure, right? Continuously pressure on everyone. Therefore, alcohol, therefore violence. And in the neighborhood that I live in, because in Colombia at that time, the selling drugs was very common. But to have like gangs was very common too. So I grew up in a neighborhood where people are used to have like bars in their windows, mm-hmm. right? Like if you go in those kind of neighbors, you feel like it's prison. Yeah. Everyone is like bars, everywhere. Because people can come to your home to steal your things. So that was the general thing, right? Or somehow one day someone could come to my home, because that was a neighbor also where people come and say you have some milk, and it's very popular like that. So it has all those specifics, but people could come home and say, oh, you remember this neighbor, his kid was killed yesterday. So that was the outside. And in my home, my whole mother family was had a huge history of violence. Like everything was through hitting, punching, yelling, and that's the form of communication that we knew, right? But there were lots of traces of sexual abuse. So what I said is like emotional and physical abuse. But there was also sexual abuse, pedophilia, and that creates such tension because there is so secret, right? And you don't say that, but you're constantly like feeling that, right? And so I had sexual abuse and physical abuse and moral abuse constantly from my mother and from everyone, in the sense that they didn't even know how to, instead of saying to you, okay, shut up, hug you, right? And it happens that I was a child, because now I'm recognizing that hypersensitive. So that is not very great in this kind of environments, right? So when I cried, it was like a stop, right? Everything, stop, stop, don't complain, don't complain, don't complain. And I heard, and we were living with one of my mother's brother. That was the person that abused me. And this guy has extreme violence. Like when I'm telling you extreme, it's like everyone has, was stinged like this when he started drinking. Because violence plus alcohol, not a very good idea. So I heard things like, when he was like, usually payday, he came very late, so all the doors were like closed, like I tell you, in jail, like many things to close the door. So he started like banging on the door. And I remember, because I slept with my mother for a long time when I was a kid. And I remember my mother saying to me, it's like taking something to be ready to hit if he start hitting her, and saying to me, don't move and don't make a sound, right? Stay in the room, don't move and don't make a sound. And that, for a child, is extremely, extremely traumatic, right? And then hearing all the things, and then my mother coming back to the bed, shaking. And so me near, as a perhaps high sensitivity person and very empathic, I was taking all that. And my mother too, my mother used to say things like, yeah, she's mine, and if I want to kill her, I can kill her. When she was enraged because of something. Some things like, I didn't want to eat meat, but it was so painful for her, for me not to eat meat. That was the main core of the plate, and that was the most expensive. So, and for her, the thing that will help me more for my body. And I didn't want to eat meat. And that made her so enraged. But when someone say to her, well, stop, she will say, she's mine. And if I want to kill her, I can. So that was the kind of things. Plus being hypersensitivity all the time. And if I put something on me and start saying, no, I don't want to put that, have the choice. She didn't have the choice. She didn't have like 20 sweaters for me or pick. No, you put this one and that's all, right?
Yeah.
But for me, some things, and now at almost 40, I'm only recognizing that that's what I was wired. And yes, sometimes there are things, and it's not only the material, sometimes it's the energy, which the material or the thing, the cloth was made. Sometimes I cannot stand it.
Wow.
But I couldn't say that to my mother. It wasn't possible for them to understand those kind of things.
Yeah, it probably wasn't really possible for you to understand why you were being so difficult, you know?
Yes. But when I look at all of that, now I see it was made because I'm like going backwards, because what happened is that 6 years ago, I was suicidal, I was alcoholic, I was taking pills to sleep and recreational drugs, but very often. And I was working too much, and I was like, couldn't bear things anymore. And at that moment, I start like remembering things. So my feeling is like I'm going backwards, right? Some people I hear like they are going towards the future, and I'm like remembering backwards.
Yeah.
Because my coping mechanism was to forget. And I wasn't aware that I forgot my childhood.
Yeah.
Really, like, it sounds crazy, but I wasn't aware that I forgot my childhood.
I mean, in a sense, it does sound crazy, but on the other hand, it sounds completely reasonable that you, in order to survive, you would have to forget, because so that must have delivered you into adulthood without a strong sense of who you were. If you, one, had all this incredible pressure as a child to survive and stay safe and become invisible and quiet, and to develop a sense of self as a child, like to really know who you are, because that requires safety and silence, right? And then moving forward into adulthood, and then now you don't even remember where you've come from. And
yes, but for me, at when I was a teenager, my promise to myself was like, this won't happen to me anymore. So I stopped being silent to start being aggressive. Like, I will eat life, right? And I will push through everything and anything. And I'm not a victim, right? And come to me and I will pass through you, right? So my childhood, I was like, don't say anything. And on my teenage years, I was like full of rage.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a sink or swim, you know, it's survival of the fittest, right? And so that probably was not who you really were either. That was something that you took on in order to survive in a way that was different from the way that you were surviving as a child, I guess, right?
Yes, yes, all the time, survival all the time. And not only survival, but what I know now is that I push we mimic other people. And this is how we understand life and how we learn things, by mimicking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was so lost on how I was, who I was, what I wanted, that I start always like, oh, this is sounds good, I will take it, right? And my mimicking, since I'm so good at energies and mimicking and feeling things, and right, I start like taking people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
To the point sometimes I took their pains, their most of the time, but their sickness, their way, right? So my whole life I was living people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
in changing and being directed by everyone. Like, what do you want to go to the university? What do you want to study? Oh, I heard someone talking about psychology, and she was like so passionate, and right, that I wanted that, right? So I'm going for psychology. And then no. So I heard someone saying, oh, you must be very good at business because you talk to people, you're good. Sounds good, business. Then my whole life, right?
It's kind of
Like,
like a balloon at sea, just tossed about and
yes, trying to feel something.
mm,
Also because I have I have not been in my body, because mostly, and I sometimes now when I remember some things and I have to feel the panic, it's not very right. Yeah, no, now I'm used to, right, and it takes you like this. And I had moments when I had panic attacks on the street, just by seeing a man crossing by. Right?
yeah. So even so much of the terror that you experienced as a child was hidden as well. I mean, it would force itself out, but it wasn't really necessarily tied to a circumstance. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the triggering event that began the unwinding of all of this.
Okay, so I'm not very good with dates. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
But it must be 2002, because last time we thought I kept saying 2012, and it's not 2012, it's 2002. Right before I left Colombia and I came to France, 2 years, 1 year or 2 years after that, um, we were with a friend in a bar and drinking and drinking and drinking, because I was a binge drinker. And we left to go to go to sleep. I don't know what hour was that, and of course I was drunk, and of course we had a fight. And so I said, okay, I'm going alone, and I start walking. And what truly happened is that a group of guys came like teasing me because it was in the middle of the street, right? But they like put themselves in a circle around me, and that triggered the remembrance of my childhood abuse. So I claim that I have been raped. It was according to the times and the moments and the people around, and right. So that start my life, like start becoming really, really weird and really painful, because I was so sure, like I had this feeling that I had been raped, but A plus B plus C, nothing was according to what you're saying. So you're crazy, or you searched for it because you were drunk. And what were you doing alone at 4 o'clock in the morning outside? And then I was so used to have this, when I took a role, I was so used to go into the role all the way, right? And it's what we do, humans. We take a role and we go all the way on a point of view that we have what is to be this, right? So if I claim that I was raped, I will make the story and I will go with it no matter what. But on the inside, I was so afraid, my God, I'm losing it, right? And then at some point I said, okay, I'm losing it. And so I started not sleeping, and I started going to the psychiatric
Psychiatrist.
yes. And so I went to the hospital, and I was so used to my whole life to invent my life, right? And to have roles that I our conversations were so strange because I had to continue the role. And she was a big professional, and she was believing me. And I was getting even more afraid. How is she not aware that I'm telling stories? And this fear of not knowing, because at that moment I was playing the role because I was sure something happened, but the reality was showing me the police, my friends, and everything. Nothing was, you couldn't have been raped at that moment because it couldn't have happened. So I was really literally losing it. Like, I know it happened. I have to take the role. I'm even convincing the chief of staff of the psychiatric area, and I was losing it. So many times I went to facilities, little facilities, for a few days, because what she knew is that I was just like in panic attacks. And that, so, but the thing is that she gave me so much drugs that when I was outside, I was completely drugged, completely. And one day I was almost hit by a car. And I knew that it was me walking like a walking dead. And I cut the drugs altogether. Not a very good idea, but that was me, taking a roll, cutting a roll, taking another roll, cutting a roll, like taking lives, right? And yes, I'm so strong that I could do that. Every time I was like cracking up a little bit, but I could do that. So I stopped everything. And I invent myself a life, and I knew a guy, and I started with him. And okay, this is my hero. This is it. This is now, this is it. But things were catching up, right? Because no emotion, no energy that is there without looking at it and dissolved it left is there, right? The information is there. So things were getting difficult and difficult and difficult. And for a strong man that practice sports, extreme sports and all that, suddenly he just made a heart attack at 29 years old. And we start something like he started he had not a pacemaker, but a machine. But we start living with something like anytime, at any moment, he could make heart attacks. And I saw him make 22 in one single moment. So I started not sleeping because the role that I took was, you will not die under my surveillance. Because his father died like that during sleeping time. So I almost stopped sleeping, and that for 5 years. Really, like I slept, the little thing in the air could wake me up. And so I slept like, I don't know how. And so coffee, alcohol, right? And all those things to keep up. But in 2016, I was at the breaking point. And again, hypersensibility and living with someone who is him, that is the sick person, is not me. So you cannot complain. Right? I was in total panic. And it was me who stayed for 11 hours when he was being under surgery. I was for 11 hours waiting for news. But everyone said to me, like, it's not you who were on the table, right?
Yeah.
So the story of my life, right? Don't complain. You can't complain. And it is not up to you to complain. It's the others that are living the things, not you, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that now I recognize that I can't even live the things people is living without them to knowing that they are living it. But that was too much, and I didn't even knew that. But I was at the breaking point, and so I was suicidal. Really, like every day of my life, I start my life saying, oh my God, hopefully today is the end. And I was living in Paris at the time of the bombings. And the most incredible thing is that one day before one of the bombings, I was in the same street that one guy shot at people. I was in one restaurant like here, and 2 restaurants after, the guy like took, I don't know, 10 lives, something like that. And in my head, I said, oh my God, not a chance. One day, just like I missed it for one day. And that day I said, oh my God, this is so sad. Really. So I start looking at it. It's really, I really want to die. But when it became so difficult, I always claimed that I wasn't religious, and I couldn't. And Catholic religion was like painful to me. But I didn't knew better. I always knew something was outside, because I felt it outside and very far. But I always knew that it was something greater. But it wasn't Catholic religion, not for me, right? But the only thing I knew was Catholic religion. So I went to church and I said, okay, I don't know who you are and I don't know if you know me, but either you take me or I want to be free and happy. It didn't start with the happiness. No. I needed to look at the unhappiness to today being laughing, and not because I need to make a good face. No, because I really feel that. But it didn't start with the happiness.
Yeah.
It started with sickness, and it started with things moving up to be seen. So the sickness part was that I went to the gynecologist and he said to me, yeah, okay, out of nowhere, because 6 months before nothing was there, you have, like I had 10 fibroids, but 2 of them were so big that he said to me, it is probably most probably we will have to take your womb off. But I sort of heard a voice that said to me, now this is the choice point. If you do that, you really know in your heart what is going to be the road, right? And I said, oh my God, no. And not even because I wanted to be a mother, because at that point I was like, oh no, I don't want to be a mother. I spent my whole life denying myself that I wanted to be a mother because I was so afraid to be my mother. And because I saw my siblings being my mother. So I was so sure that I was going to be my mother. For me, was so clear. I cannot have a child. I cannot do that to a child. But it wasn't that. It's just that I knew if I was going to surgery and that take my womb off, I will never had the experience of other things. And that I knew, I don't know, like even see it without seeing, but I knew what was going to happen. So I quit my job and I started looking at what was happening. The thing is that I said, it will take me 6 months. And 6 years after, here we go. I haven't figured out everything. I'm still discovering.
Yeah, so it sounds like you sort of like took this Catalina attitude that you were gonna crush this part of your life, like you were gonna get through all the hard part and then step into the happiness in 6 months, but it
Yeah.
obviously didn't happen that way. So
No.
you started to have to rewind your life, step back into your life. Why was that such a necessary component?
Actually, no, I didn't choose that, Kay. Really not. Because I wasn't aware that I forgot my life. For me, and really, I know it sounds crazy. For me, it was normal. Like, but I was afraid my mother has Alzheimer's. And sometimes when I was with people from school, they had so much memories about the school and the people of the school, the teachers and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I really don't know who these people are. Make sounds like you are in the conversation, but I wasn't. So I was afraid that I was losing my memory, but I really wasn't aware that I have really lost my childhood. So really, I was losing my memory. I was going into my mother's path. I probably would have ended up there. And with the alcohol and my central nervous system that was like in red, more than in red. So it wasn't a choice because I wasn't aware that I had to remember. It started happening. Things like, for example, one day I was looking at a movie that is called, it's a Asian movie, it's called Parasite. And I went to see this movie because they won an Oscar. So I went to see the movie and like, oh my God, I saw, they had a home that from times to times what floated with the water of the canalizations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because when there was so much rain, the water get up like that, and there was floating in all this awful water. And it happened when I was a child. And I didn't remember that. And it was in the middle of the movie and like a boom. Right? So it wasn't a choice for me. And everything that I started to remember happened exactly those kind of things.
Wow.
Like out of nowhere, a sound, something, and I had, oh my God. The thing that I told you about my mother saying to me, don't move, don't make a sound and all stuff, was I had neighbors that used to drink and then get into fights. And at first was my trigger. Oh my God, they are so rude. Oh my God, they drink. Oh my God. But now I know when there's a trigger, there is something that is hidden that needs to be acknowledged. So I asked to knew what was happening. And then one day, boom, I had the whole thing, right? So I didn't choose to remember. It's coming like that for me.
But at some point, so early on in that process, it sounds like you were feeling like more of like you were losing your mind, that you didn't understand what was happening. But at some point, it sounds like you recognized that this was the path of healing and you accepted it as that. Can you recall when that moment was and how
Yes, the moment when my gynecologist said to me, we will take your womb off. That at that moment I knew that if I took this option, it wasn't going to be very good. And And so I took the other option, but not knowing where to start, not knowing what to get on, right? I just knew that I couldn't take the option he was giving me. And yes, at that moment I said 6 months and wrapped, right? So I start with meditation, but couldn't meditate. But I start all the things that, so Eckhart Tolle, right? All the Wayne Dyer reading, and that was my path of healing, if you want. But I haven't had a plan, and I still don't, because things just come for me, like really everything just present to me. Once the moment, it happens. Once the moment to discover something, it comes.
So you've never really had to search for this and that to help you through. It's just always appeared.
Always like even one video to lead me to one person that say to me, oh, this person might help you, oh this, oh this, oh this, oh this, oh this. And of course at the beginning was like exactly like I did my whole life. Wow, I was so taken by their story, or I find that they were powerful, or so I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. But now I recognize it doesn't happen like that, right? But no, I haven't had a plan, and I'm still discovering things. And mostly I'm discovering what I like, what Catalina is. Like my whole life, I didn't like swimming. It wasn't my fear. It was other people's fears. Now I so love swimming. Things like that, really,
Wow.
like things like that. I believed my whole life that I was afraid of swimming. And now I just, when I get to recognize that this fear wasn't even mine, really like I went to a swimming pool and I swam like, or even stayed, not only swim, but stayed like for hours. And yeah, it's, what do I like to eat? Right? Because I ate what was hyped to eat, what was in France, how do you have to eat when you're a woman, or in Colombia, or here, or right?
Right.
But never, what do you like to eat? Or don't you like to eat? So I never had a plan, but everything came perfectly. But I'm still discovering things exactly like I told you. Some day, just like this, I had the whole picture coming. And then I used to, not now, because now I know that it happens like that, and just allow it. But at the beginning, I had to call my sister and say, this sounds like possible for you. And she said, yeah, of course, it's my uncle. Do you remember? And I was like, yeah, I'm remembering, right? But I had to call my sister to ask if I wasn't like in a complete delirium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like there's this interplay that threads its way through your life of what reality is, what the truth is, and the
Absolutely.
truth of your experience and what you can trust and what has been hidden and what has been forced upon you. And I feel like that is really a common element of this process that we're in right now. It's not like becoming someone, it's taking off all the things that have been put upon you and conditioned in you to figure out what the essence was from the beginning, who you are and who you always have been. And
Yeah.
that's you're doing it in such an extreme way.
Yes, I've chosen a path that is always on the edge. Yes,
Of life and
all the
death.
way, all the way, all the way. But now I know it's not necessary, and that's what is beautiful. That I can for sure say to people, it is not necessary.
Something that you said in your interview with Todd that I found really interesting was that, well, first of all, you said that you don't really consider that you're overcoming your story. It's more that you're welcoming it in, and that this process of welcoming it in, I guess you could call it integration, is it quite different than like owning your story, which has like a little bit of a gripping feeling to it. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I I I have profound knowing that what what I want to say is that all this is a misunderstanding, right? What I'm discovering is all this is a misunderstanding, right? The misunderstanding of my mother never loved me. No, she didn't even know for her what love was. She was loving me as much as she could, right? For me now, all of this is just a misunderstanding because minds are can only understand from a point of view, right? So if it feels good, your mother being like cuddles and but you don't have that, now she doesn't love me. That is not what is happening.
Mm.
And nothing that I have lived right now for me is just a bunch of misunderstandings. I wasn't looking at understanding the other. I was just looking to satisfy my point of view, even as a child. Even as a child. And so I'm not, and by the way, and I do have lots of respect for everything that people do to feel better and to their stories and to become their own selves and to become free and to become one, not unite, one. But I have never had success with the inner child work, because at some point, more or less all the techniques that I had encountered of childhood, inner child work, at some point they ask you to nurture your child, inner child that was in pain or that was in panic or that, and I can understand that. I can understand this point of view, but go tell Catalina 6 years before to say to your inner childhood, everything's going to be fine. I couldn't. Okay. It would have been a lie. I couldn't. And I wasn't in a place to nurture nothing. And what I do know now, from where I see life now, today, right here, right now with you at this moment, is that if it's not available for everyone at every moment, it's not for me. Because grace is available for everyone at every moment. And grace is not complicated. And grace doesn't demand that you had to start 3 years after, or that you have to wait to be ready to know. So these techniques that, again, please believe me, I respect and I understand, cannot be applied for everyone. And if I cannot be applied for everyone, for me, that is not what I call grace. Because grace doesn't left people outside.
Oh my gosh, I have complete goosebumps with you saying that, because that opens up this huge, huge, huge space for everybody to experience their own way, their own version, their own healing, their own miracle, because it can be miraculous. It can occur in an instant for people, and it can take 6 years, or it can take 50, or, it just, there's no rules. Or I love that so much. That is so profoundly beautiful and hopeful too. And that is that the source of your faith? Because at some point you must have had to have some faith that things could get better or could be better in order to carry on.
Well, my source of faith was rage. Yes, like this is unfair. And that is why I like so much people talking about emotions, and some emotions are not good. And how I see things is that every emotion is like, everything is energy, and energy is not different energies, it's just energy, right? At different spectrums and different vibrations, and some are felt or experienced are heavier than others. But most of the time, it's just what we have as a point of view of what this is.
So we
right?
assign value, some sort of value to it. Good.
Not only value, but a concept, a whole concept. And of course, anger, on one spectrum of anger is rage and what I lived. So for my mind and many, and what we see is normal, that mind said, this is not good. So anger is not good. On the other side of the spectrum, most of the time is when you're angry that you said, this has to change, right? And it's the same energy, right?
Yeah.
Just one side of another side of the spectrum, right? Like for me, it's not linear, it's circular, because it goes in cycles, right? But it wasn't faith for me, it was rage. This is unfair. When I started recognizing what happened to me, was this is unfair. And even someone has to almost pay. Like she never said she's sorry. Now she's Alzheimer's, right? Like, oh my God, she did all this and now she just left. This is so freaking unfair. So I kept because it was so unfair. So me anger took me alive.
Mm.
And I believe people are mistaking things sometimes because fear and anger. I heard so much fear doesn't want you to, or you have to get rid of fear, or you have to get right. Like we are in a vendetta against fear. And of course, fears paralyze you. And of course, fear makes you go into even more illusions about what is not good for you. And fear is in a part of our brain that will disappear once fear won't be there anymore. Because we are not going to be animals anymore. For the moment, we are almost like animals. We're acting like animals. But when you take fear and you just go into that, don't give it that name. And you just go into that fear and you just say, okay, you just allow it. You can feel into your body. It's one of the emotions that makes you feel into your body. It's my experience, right? But you feel the blood, right? You feel like this rush of blood. You feel, and you can feel this power of your body because, of course, you can run from where you are because there is a tiger, right? And so if you take this energy just to feel your body and don't buy into the stories, not even about what fear is or what fear is not, or what triggered fear in you, but you just feel into this energy. All energies had something for you.
Yeah. I can relate to that so much because fear certainly was my path to grace too. Because I had to get to a point of surrender because I had so much of it and I could not live with it anymore. It just was too much. And I just, like you said, I just surrendered into it and let it wash right through me, into me, through me, out of me. And I recognized that it was just an energy that I was choosing and I could be with it or not. And that really changed my life. I still experience fear. I was, especially on planes, and it's like now I see it as my opportunity to revisit an old friend and figure out what it has to teach me, or how human, to get back into that really human experience. But I love that yours was rage. That's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said, and I think I chatted with you a little bit about this, is that you said that there is no higher perspective without the lower experience. And if you are counting on the higher perspectives of others, it might be bypassing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. For example, at some point I was like, this is unfair. This is so freaking unfair. And everyone should say sorry to me for what they did to me. And right, I was so in pain, in rage, in really pain, right? And I remember these practices of forgiving, and opohonopo and nopohonopo. I don't know. I can't remember how that happened. Yeah, well, and I found that beautiful, but it still was like, oh, no, someone has to say something to me, right? But at some point, I was tired of fighting what, and who is going to say I'm sorry to you? It's over. And I went to a meditation, and then I saw a friend. We were getting some sessions with some meditations. And at the end of the session, I just, saw my mother. That wasn't really exactly her face. And I just say to her, and my friend was leading me to normally to get out the rage, right? Like say to her, like, okay, right, this is the space. And what my soul chose to do was to show me this. It wasn't in no space, because it wasn't white, it wasn't black, it wasn't, there is no a color that I can describe to you. We were in a no space. And I say to her, oh my God, thank you for having done all that, being the bad guy, so I have this experience. Thank you for agreeing for that. And if I hadn't had the experience that I had, I wouldn't be able to say to people that even forgiving, what are you going to forgive to someone? That they agree to have so much pain, to inflict pain to you, so you can hide your experience? What is there to forgiving about, right? But if I didn't have all that experience that I had, I'd come to this point where I know there is nothing to forgive. Nothing. To no one. No matter how it appears. It's not easy to be the bad guy for you. We do not inflict pain without being in pain. There is no way. Okay, there are people here that are not people and that have some agendas. And okay, all of that. But they have the same source. And they are here for you. Either you discover it or you continue forgiving. But if you continue forgiving, you will continue, and you are continuously, somehow, even if it's the slightest, you are then still attached to something that someone did to you. Detach, and you will see that there is nothing to forgive.
Wow. I think that's going to be hard for people to hear, because we do want to hang on to our victimhood because that's righteous, and we want to be righteous.
Oh, yes, I was in rage. Oh, yeah, of course. And it was so much rage that the moment I had the opportunity, right? My friend guiding me into a meditation, this is the moment you can say to her. And what my essence showed me is that you see what she played for you. And I was like in oh my God.
Yeah.
And then really, I remember that, and I'm still feeling this, oh my God.
Yeah.
What we agree to play for others.
Yeah. That kind of like we're playing the roles of perpetrator and victim, but that's not who we are. That is our service.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to be the victim, but to be the bad guy. To be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So
that's like you've asked for twice as much pain, because one, in order to be the perpetrator, you have to be in pain, and then you have all the feelings that come with causing harm to somebody. That is a harder role. And I mean, truthfully, we're both at the same time. You know, you can't even be one without being the other.
and by letting them, sometimes when we are in a loop, like the same story, even in a, we are also inflicting pain. Don't get you wrong. Look at it, look at what it is, and you're inflicting pain by letting the other playing this game.
Yeah.
Right? So that is what I probably was talking about. This is, you have to have the flesh experience to have the higher perspective.
Mm.
And of course, when we read all this Eckhart Tolle, I was like, oh my God, yes. But sometimes it's avoidance. Avoidance is not only about fear. It's not my perspective. Avoidance is about choice. We don't avoid things, looking at things because we are fearful all the time. No, because we have the power of choosing not to see some things. And sometimes we live, and believe me, I know what is living other people's stories. So I see that so much. People that take what others say and just repeat that, and like say this is like this. They are not having their experience. They are living or believing they are living other people's experiences.
Mm.
But if you don't go through that, you won't find out what is it that you came here to transmit. Because you can have lived exactly the same experience as me and didn't come here to transmit the same thing about the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because right, I'm not the only child that had difficult experience, and my experience can be nothing. That is always comparing more pain, less pain, more difficulties, less difficulties. Pain is pain, difficulties are difficulties. That's all. That's also what I think, what I know about pain. I don't compare mine to other people's.
Yeah.
And
because then you would have to not complain. Like, if you came across somebody who you perceive to be in more pain, then you have no right to speak of your pain. And
of course,
yeah,
of course, and or I will invalidate other people's stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I know their stories.
Yeah.
But I still know that they are living it.
Yeah. That is some really masterful living, when you can get to the point where you understand how in service everything really is to you, and that you've designed it that way. Like, it's completely flawless in its execution.
Oh, yes. And from my perspective, what is going to happen will happen. And if I talk about my stories, because they are stories, is because I know for sure that people will start having crisis experiences, because we live in denial. I forget that I forget my childhood, but people forget that they are in pain. And somehow many people will start, and I know for sure because people is reaching out, and I know, and I listen stories, and people are going to start seeing how in pain they are. And I tell what happened to me, because this is what in psychology we call recollection. And people will start recollect things. And they are going to start recollecting things that they are not even theirs also. Like it happens to their grandmothers. And so, because things are going to start, it's time to see that. And this is why I agree to tell people what happened to me. Because someday maybe they will listen to this and will say, oh my God, okay, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Absolutely. That's why we're here.
Yes.
We're here. Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to link the interview that you did with Todd in the notes, because you talk in a lot more detail about what happened to you, and that people might be curious about that, or again, it might serve to help them recollect some pain that they've been holding on to. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's just a vibratory truth that if we're moving into higher frequencies, then the lower frequencies must come up and out.
Yes. And our foundations are fear and are fear. And so to get the foundation right, we have to see what's happening in the foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I promise you I promise you to all those that everything is going to be all right.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how sometimes the recollection of the pain is almost harder to endure than the actual experiencing of the original experience of pain?
Yes, because actually by the way, sometimes the shock happens so fast, right? But when you recall it, when you remember that, then your mind start attaching even more stories, right? To what happened. What happened could have been just one word, from your mother, like shut up,
Right.
right?
Right.
That so much at that moment, it goes exactly here, and right, and this energy has been created and is there. But when you remember that, then my mother didn't love me. My mother was this. My father was that. And so it's all the pain come with the recollection. All the pain.
Yeah. Well. Okay. This seems like a good time to move into our lightning round.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for all of that. Okay,
Thank
my first question for you is actually a request, and that is, can you describe your relationship with peace? Because I heard you speak about this on Facebook. I saw a post that the difference between being peaceful and being in peace or at peace. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Being peaceful, from my perspective, is when we get everything that we wanted so much for, right? And so people, finally, right? Like even my home decoration done, finally, right? And you feel peaceful. After all this excitement and all this, I did it. And then, because of course, it will last this, and then your mind will need to find out another thing, another project, and right? So it's a constant looking for something. Being at peace, from my perspective, what I live is that even that I have a project or not, even something happened that I wasn't expecting or that is shocking, breathtaking, anything, I'm in allowance of it. And some things that I wish for can happen or not, right? I'm in allowance of this, right? I'm not at peace all the time. I'm getting good at allowing things. And so getting in that vibration. And once you're in that vibration, you are not looking for things that give you peace.
Mm. Yeah.
Right?
Right. Wow.
Because otherwise it's like we are looking projects and finally.
Yeah.
But how long it lasts? Just give me one person that will say to me that one of those things have given them a state of peace.
Yeah.
Long lasting. It's just like I don't have this project anymore. So you feel no more pressure. For me, that being peaceful. Being peaceful for me is not that I talk like this and everything is rainbows and no. It's like when there is no rainbow, it's okay.
Yeah. For me, that experience is like, no matter what is happening around me, I like am connected to my source essence. That's what brings me peace in no matter what situation. And frankly, I feel more connected to that when things are chaotic around me and I am feeling scared or I am feeling worried or whatever the case may be, I once you know how to tap into that, you can experience both simultaneously.
You can come back.
Yeah,
You
it's
can come
always
back.
there. Once you, but it requires cultivating too, because if I let myself become distracted with my circumstances and doing things and being places, I can lose that connection a little bit. And I have to, it's something that I have to cultivate regularly. I'm committed to cultivating that relationship with my essence or being in that space.
I understand what you say. For me, this experience, I will say more like we are still uncovering this relationship that is always there, and this place that is always there, place, no place, self that is always there. So I wouldn't say that my practice is like commit to that, but my practice is taking out everything that is making me believe that I have to come back to something, right? Because actually I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Number 2, when did you first realize that you liked yourself, or have you gotten there?
Yes, one day that I was singing. I don't have a very beautiful voice, but I was singing like a, I don't know. I don't know. And I always choose the kind of songs that are so difficult to sing, like a Prince or Queen for sure, right? Aretha Franklin, right? I don't go for the easy ones. And one day I was just singing in my mind, like, oh my God, shut up, right? Like, you have heard yourself. And I just had this moment that, no, I haven't heard myself. I don't freaking care. I'm not singing to be the voice. I'm singing to be happy. What the hell? So at that moment, I say, yeah, what's the freaking chat in my mind? And I'm not doing things to be this or that. If it just bring happiness to one, and that one is me, is worthy. And that's all. So I keep singing the most difficult songs.
I love that. I feel like that's kind of something that I'm like, it's a path of discovery for me, like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and some of the things, and because you're new in every situation. So one of the things that triggers me and my how I feel about myself is aging, and that is serving me in that way to be examining how I feel about myself and my human experience. And sometimes I don't like it. Okay. You talked
Well,
about.
I like how you look like very much.
Thank you. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, so I'm really curious. What are some of the foods that you found that you like that you didn't think you liked?
Some of the
Foods.
Well, the thing is that I more find out, for example, that that I more about the foods, what kind of foods. No, I was pretty much the kind of person, I became the kind of person that tastes everything before. But what I find out now is that there are some days that I don't want to eat.
Me too.
And that's not a problem. Now, is day to drink water? I don't know. And so more what you like now is more like I became no problematic about food. About it's not that I'm not problematic. My roommate will not agree with that. But I became like, it's not an obligation for me to eat every day and at this o'clock and this o'clock and this o'clock. Sometimes no, and even sugar, that there is so much vendetta about sugar. And yeah, no, sometimes I eat chocolate for dinner, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes, I think there's so much that we are going to be discovering about our relationship with food. And I have experienced a lot of similar things where I'm like, food just in general doesn't hold as much interest to me as it used to. It used to be like a big source of enjoyment, I guess you could say. Now it's like, you know, sometimes I really love eating and sometimes I don't. And sometimes things like right now, my body does not seem to want to eat any grains at all. And so, whatever, I just go with the flow. Sometimes I want to eat meat, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want to have juice or water. And
yes, and for me, the most important thing about food is that I become aware. Sometimes I become aware of some things, like this thing that I'm eating, no, like I don't know, the chicken and this kind of how they raise chicken just to kill them and put into your plate. And really, I can, I don't know, my body is like in front of no,
yeah.
no. And so I won't impose to my body something that is not, I don't know, something that my body doesn't want.
Yeah. Yeah. But I find myself also, because I'm not perfect at this, that I will eat something out of habit or because I thought I liked it before, not really listening to my body. And then I have to apologize to my body. I'm sorry, I did that. I used to love lentils. I still do. I love lentils, but my body does not like them.
Yes.
So,
Yes. It's in our minds, huh?
yeah. Yeah.
It's in our minds.
And there's some kind of connection between taste and happiness, like there's some kind of unconscious correlation that.
And if you look at it closely, sometimes you're eating things that are green, and it has to do with your vibration, what you need. And by the colors and go with the colors. People are not aware, but sometimes we need to eat a color, not a food, but a color.
Interesting.
And look at, if you do mandalas and you want to eat something and you look at your mandalas, then you will see that you're painting more of that color. Sometimes you need to eat a color.
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting because I've been obsessed with green lately. I'm like, everything that I'm choosing is green. I bought a car, it's green. I painted my walls green.
Yeah, your heart, your sometimes our hearts are opening, and this center really has a color, and just a vibration. Colors has vibrations, and like everything, and so it's a correlation lead you to something. So sometimes you're not even eating because of this or that. You're eating a color, you're eating a vibration. And this sugar thing, I understand it, and yes, it's not good for the pineal, or but all those are concepts. Sometimes the amount of energy that you're taking is too much, and yes, you have to take your pineal and make it not that bigger, because you will lose it. So you eat chocolate or you eat sugar because you are regulating things. It's just a matter of perspective. Never forget that. I don't know, maybe yes, but I don't know if it's that someone here in this planet that could tell you every perspective possible for what is happening to you. So go with it until it doesn't feel good to you, not to someone.
Yeah.
Or right?
Right.
Go with it because it has a why.
Yeah. It has a why. It has a why. I love that. Okay. Is there something on your to-do list that never gets done?
Yes, to iron my t-shirts.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't iron my t-shirts. I hate ironing.
So sometimes I'm just like,
It looks fine. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. My last question for you is, do you have a calling in life?
A calling, like what I'm calling to in life, what I think I'm called to do.
Yes.
Well, I love to talk. So I probably will end up talking. I don't know where, but I love to talk. I love to talk. And one of the way I perceive energy is by the vibration of the sounds. And so I know many things pass through the vibration of the sounds of the words that we choose. Of course, the concept we have on the words that we choose, the collective concept of the words that we choose, and our voice has a particular imprint, and it is touching the ones that are hearing it in a particular way. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. Maybe not, but I feel like I will end up talking.
That's so interesting because I have felt that way, or I've been given that knowing that I should be using my voice, even though, like, when I even talk about using my voice, like, it gets constricted because I'm still working through that, because I was really quiet as a kid, and that was out of necessity too, like not to draw too much attention to myself. So did you bring a question for me today?
Yes. So you're so interested in humans, right? Mm-hmm. And you have talked to many humans, and and what I appreciate also is you're interested, like you're present for us humans talking to you. So after all this interest, what do you see for humanity? Or what do you see us as humans, evolution? Or
Yeah, I think that on the macro scale, we had to go through something, and we went through this incredibly human experience that was very experiential. It was it was very physical, it was very emotional, it was very difficult, it was like very dense so that we could feel that particular way. That was early in our history. And then we moved into an era of understanding ourselves as spirits. And we're just sort of been involved with that in the, well, I can speak from my own experience, but also, of course, that's the macro too. Come to know ourselves as spirits. And then in this next journey, we're going to be merging those two together somehow. And I'm not sure it's ever really been done before. I know I haven't done it before. And so it's this big horizon that is completely unknown to us. What is that going to be like when our spiritual power drops into this physical form? What are we going to experience? I don't think we really know that, but I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be both. It's going to be challenging, and it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be new, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's like, it'll be like learning to ride a bike. I feel like, like the exhilaration of that, but the challenge of it too, the frustration of falling and not getting it right, and all of that. But then once you get the hang of it, then you feel like you're flying. And so I think it's going to be a little bit like that. Your mic is muted. There we go.
Okay, thank you so much. I love it.
What do you think?
I think we as humans, we are defining what humanity is after all these experiences. And after, I don't know, billions of experience as humanity, what humanity is after, we are defining it. So it's to be continued, right?
Totally.
Because some of us are having experiences that other humans don't even understand. Others don't even want to know about it. So, and we are defining what being human is. I just hopefully many of us will get to the point to open up, because the possibilities are infinite.
Yeah. Do you feel it's necessary for us to go through this healing process before we can get to that?
No, and I know the value of pain. I've been into that. But no, it's not my perspective. From my perspective, things are going to get faster. Not that like 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, right? Figuring out, because we are starting to talking about, so we are anchoring things and making changes and showing changes. That's all that we can do. So many people won't have to make that much trials, right? Mm-hmm. For the first thing. And the second thing is that pain is just another energy, and pain is like when you have a tooth pain, right? You're so concentrated in the pain. You cannot be in your mind thinking. It's so painful. Pain asks for our undivided concentration. right? And that's the value of pain that make us focus on something, right? And break through something. But we can, I believe, we can learn through happiness.
I do too. I
and
think
laughter.
Yeah,
Laughter.
I think that like as humanity grows in human technology, that the processing of anything that's remaining could just be easy and simple and fast and optional.
And some people like us or others is not heroes. It's just we have made the trial, and the moment we will start showing people that no matter what stories you have lived, because you can call me the story that I haven't lived, I have lived so many, but now I can laugh. And it's not, I'm not laughing. I don't know, I'm not crazy. I'm just in an understanding, different understanding. And some people will hate me for that. And then they will hate me anymore because one day they will be able to laugh. And so I value more the laughing experience than the pain experience. Many believe that we absolutely have to go through pain. I'm not that sure.
To be continued.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Catalina, thank you so much for being with us today. I have
Thank you so much for having me.
learned so much from you, and I'm so grateful for your acquaintance and friendship.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I thank you. I'm so grateful and I asked for this. And I'm so grateful that I had this opportunity. Thank you so much.
I think that's awesome. Thank you for coming.